Mike Tomlin is not an option for the Tennessee Titans head coaching position. That's really not bad news, and they have enough candidates already. I'll explain on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, on today's show, I'm going to tell you why Mike Tomlin is not an option for the Tennessee Titans, even if he is a good candidate in theory. We'll talk about why the Titans have already too many candidates to process and how most of them are probably only good as coordinator options. Before we get into all of it, do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. Look, the head coaching search obviously is heating up right now. The Titans are going to have to hire coordinators after that as well. And we're going to have free agency, the draft. So much to discuss here in the Tennessee Titans all season. Make sure that you stay locked in to the Locked On Titans podcast. But once again, Mike Tomlin is not an option for the Tennessee Titans. And I don't say that because the Tennessee Titans should not be interested in Mike Tomlin. It's because Mike Tomlin is not an option for any team in the NFL. It's a matter of how his time in Pittsburgh is ending. Mike Tomlin didn't get fired by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He actually stepped down from the Pittsburgh Steelers, which means that the Steelers still own his rights as a coach. So the Titans cannot hire Mike Tomlin no matter what. If the Tennessee Titans wanted Mike Tomlin to be their coach, that would mean that they would have to trade for Mike Tomlin. I'm sorry, but the Tennessee Titans are not in a position to trade away draft picks for their head coach when there are so many good coaches on the market. Not only that, but it is well known in NFL circles that Mike Tomlin wants to take a year off. Mike Tomlin needs a little bit of a sabbatical. He's going to do television for a year and then come back and then have an opportunity to go back into coaching at a place that he wants to be. So Mike Tomlin is not an option for the Tennessee Titans, not because I don't like Mike Tomlin. He would be one of my top candidates to take the Titans head coaching job. I know that a lot of people have soured on Mike Tomlin because of the struggles that he's had in Pittsburgh, but we are talking about one of the best coaches in the NFL over the last 20 years. Mike Tomlin would 100% be a good option for the Tennessee Titans. But again, the reality here is he was not fired. He's not a free agent. He's stepping away to do television for a year, and then he'll come back next year, and the Steelers will trade him somewhere else, which is exactly what happened with Sean Payton. Now, here is why I don't think this is bad news for the Tennessee Titans whatsoever. This does not affect the Titans in any kind of negative way. I know that a lot of you guys are going to look at it and say, oh, there's another head coaching job that's open on the market and the Titans are going to have to compete with. But I'm sorry. I'm just going to be point blank, period, frank. I think the Tennessee Titans job is way better than the Pittsburgh Steelers job. The Titans' job is way better of an opening than Pittsburgh. And most of that has to do with the quarterback position. The quarterback position since Ben Roethlisberger has been gone from Pittsburgh has been a disaster. The Titans have Cam Ward, who's the most appealing young quarterback on the... Yeah, Lamar Jackson, obviously a more appealing candidate than Cam Ward. He's a two-time MVP and one of the best players in the NFL. But outside of that, I would take Cam Ward over Jackson Dart. I would take Cam Ward over Fernando Mendoza. I would take Cam Ward way before guys like Michael Penix or Kyler Murray or Tua Tagovailoa or whatever they got going on, Deshaun Watson or Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland or whatever you want to bring up. Like, the Titans' job is better than the Pittsburgh Steelers' job. The Pittsburgh Steelers roster is falling apart. It's old. The expectations are going to be higher right away because they want to win. Mike Tomlin wasn't good enough getting to the playoffs all the time and losing was not good enough. So the expectations are higher. The roster is deteriorating. The quarterback situation is worse. You have to follow in Mike Tomlin's footsteps, which is never an easy thing to do when you talk about a guy who's won a Super Bowl championship. So I know that a lot of people immediately looked at the Mike Tomlin situation, and I get it. He's a good coach. But again, the technical aspect of him stepping down from the Pittsburgh Steelers makes him not an option for the Tennessee Titans. And I don't think that it negatively impacts the Titans whatsoever, because the Titans' job is more attractive and more appealing than the Steelers. Yeah, I know that sounds crazy to hear, but that is 100% the case. The Titans' job is better than the Pittsburgh Steelers' job is right now. So there really is no downside, in my opinion, to the Mike Tomlin situation. And quite frankly, if I'm honest with you, I think the Tennessee Titans have too many candidates already. The Tennessee Titans have already had way too many people interview. Like, they're right on the line of this is getting out of control. And it's something that we talked on the Tennessee Titans squad show. On the squad show, we talked about it on Tuesday morning that the Titans are now up to 19 coaches that they've either interviewed or requested for an interview. And I'm sorry, but at some point in time, it becomes an efficiency problem. When you're doing a coaching search, you got to vet every candidate. You got to prepare an interview set for every single candidate. You got to look into their history. You got to research all of these candidates. And at some point in time, like, would you rather have one $5 item or five $1 items? Like, at some point in time, you stretch yourself way too thin to get the best possible option that you can. If you're so worried about vetting 19 different people, you might not do a good job with the people who really matter. And a point that Brad Hopkins, Tennessee Titans legend, made on the squad show as well that I thought made a lot of sense is there is no way that 17, 18, and 19 are as good of options as 1, 2, and 3. So at some point, it's like, what are you even doing here? Why are you even talking to these people who clearly are not qualified to be your head coach? At some point in time, it becomes a waste of time. At some point in time, you're no longer being efficient with your opportunities. So I think that it's honestly a good thing that the Tennessee Titans don't have to take on another serious candidate that they got to be worried about. Like, they have had enough. Okay, again, we got Brian Daboll, Johnathan Gannon got added to the list. Like, how many people can the Tennessee Titans realistically interview? So I think that with the Mike Tomlin situation, again, he's not an option. He's not going to be coaching this year. He's going into television to take a 1-year sabbatical before he comes back next year. If you wanted to get him anyway, you would have to trade for him. The Titans should not be trading for a head coach. And again, quite frankly, they have enough candidates on their plate right now where if you go over 20, if the Tennessee Titans go over 20 different candidates, I'm all about casting a wide net. I want the Tennessee Titans to cast a wide net for their head coaching search. But we've had Lou Anarumo and Mike McCoy and Johnathan Gannon, what it's not as bad as, Jason Garrett, Arthur Smith. Like, at some point in time, what are we doing here? Why are they wasting resources and wasting time with these guys who are not qualified whatsoever? So I think that it's a good thing for the Tennessee Titans. What the Titans need to do right now, the Titans don't need to increase the volume of the candidates that they're talking with. The Titans need to start to narrow it down. The Titans need to start to pare down their list and get to their final candidates and the people who they're actually interested in, so they can start turning the wheels of, okay, if we hire this guy, here are some coordinators who we think make sense for him. If we hire this guy, these are the moves that he's interested in making. If we hire this guy, this is the scheme that he's going to want to run. Therefore, we need to start targeting players that fit his scheme. The Titans need to start moving forward, not continuing to paddle in place. So I don't think that the Titans have overdone it to an excessive point. I don't think that the Titans have casted too wide of a net right now, but they're certainly bumping up against that, and adding Brian Daboll and Johnathan Gannon to the head coaching interviews on Tuesday. It's just, You know, how many guys do you need to interview for head coach before you can figure out who your finalists are? At some point, it goes from being a smart and wise casting a wide net situation to an inefficient situation and improper use of resources. So I'm ready for the Titans to go the other direction, not continue to add more candidates to the interview list. Like, it's time to start figuring out who you actually like, because there's no way in the world that the Tennessee Titans like all 20 of the candidates that they've talked to. But again, with that in mind, one of the reasons that they do all of these interviews is potential coordinators. If you remember back to when Mike Vrabel was hired, Matt LaFleur was interviewed as a head coach and ultimately was hired as the offensive coordinator. So what I want to do now is talk about the guys who have done head coaching interviews or will do head coaching interviews with the Titans, who I think actually make more sense as a coordinator. First, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Gusto. Let's be real, no one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets, except Gusto, of course, because that's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is an all-in-one, remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. You get unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month, and knowing that you can reach a certified HR expert anytime gives you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNFL.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about why Mike Tomlin is not an option for the Tennessee Titans, not because I don't like Mike Tomlin, but because he literally is technically not an option for the Titans. He's going to go do TV for a year, and he's still under contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Titans have interviewed enough guys, and I think a lot of the candidates the Titans have interviewed or requested are really more options at coordinator. So I want to talk about who fits that bill. Who would make sense as a great offensive and defensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans out of the group of coaches that they have interviewed or requested so far. And on the offensive side of the ball, number one on my list is Kliff Kingsbury. Kliff Kingsbury is my fourth or fifth best head coaching option, fifth best coaching option for the Tennessee Titans. But I think in reality, Kliff Kingsbury would be better as an offensive coordinator. I am not as confident in Kliff Kingsbury as a head coach as I am some of the other options that I like better. But Kliff Kingsbury is an offensive coordinator. That would be an absolute home run. And here's why. 2 words. Cam Ward. All right. Not only did Kliff Kingsbury just create the best rookie quarterback season in NFL history with Jaden Daniels in Washington last year. But if you go back to college, who did Kliff Kingsbury work with in college? Patrick Mahomes, who has a very similar skill set to Patrick Mahomes, is a guy who's a playmaker who can get outside, create, has elite arm talent and arm angles in those situations, has mobility to make plays, but isn't necessarily a dynamic running quarterback. Cam Ward. So Cam Ward's skill set actually does match up with Patrick Mahomes' skill set pretty well. And what system did Patrick Mahomes excel in college? The air raid system. And I know a lot of people like to point out, oh, Kliff Kingsbury had Kyler Murray, and then he had Jaden Daniels. Those guys are more traditional running quarterbacks, but Kliff Kingsbury didn't have a running quarterback in college all the time. It's not like he's beholden to that. Again, he ran an air raid system with Patrick Mahomes when he was at Texas Tech in college. So the air raid system, which is what Cam Ward ran at Miami. Are you guys putting two and two together now? So Kliff Kingsbury wants to run in his DNA a system that Cam Ward ran in college that made him the number one overall pick. We could talk about Kliff Kingsbury's ability to be a leader in the locker room. I don't think that Kliff Kingsbury, if you look at his scouting report as a coach, Kliff Kingsbury's concern is, can he lead a team? That's the concern with Kliff, but that's not as much of an issue. When it comes to being the offensive coordinator, you don't have to lead the team. So to me, there is no better option to be the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans than Kliff Kingsbury. He is my number one. Now, my number two, and let me say this, there is not a big gap between number one and number two. I'm not like number one's good, number two's way below or anything like that. That's not the case. Number two is Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel would be a slam dunk offensive coordinator. Quite honestly, I think that Mike McDaniel is probably going to get another head coaching opportunity. So I don't think that Mike McDaniel is even going to be available to be an offensive coordinator. But at the end of the day, if he is available, he would make perfect sense. And we talk about potential pairings. What pairings would make a lot of sense? And if the Titans go with a guy like Robert Saleh as their head coach, which I think should be a solid option, and he is going to interview with the Tennessee Titans. If they hire Robert Saleh, Mike McDaniel as the offensive coordinator would be an absolute home run, over the moon, incredible decision. And it makes a lot of sense because Mike McDaniel and Robert Saleh work together in San Francisco, and those guys are really, really good friends. Some have even said best friends. So if you're somebody who's screaming up and down right now, I like Mike McDaniel more than I like Kliff Kingsbury, fine. You don't have to twist my arm. I'm going to be over the moon, elated, and overjoyed with both of them. They are by far the best offensive coordinator options on the market. Like, I love both of those options as offensive coordinators. They are perfect because I think the concern with those people, the concern is that they're not leaders. But I don't have to worry about that if they're offensive coordinators and not head coaches. I don't need them to be head coach level leaders if they're offensive coordinators. I need them to be some of the most brilliant scheme offensive guys in the NFL, with which both of them are. So those are my top two picks for the offensive coordinator position if the Titans are interviewing people for coordinator positions. Like that, it's not even close. Now, one step down from that, a tier down from that on the offensive side of the ball for me is Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll was the former head coach of the New York Giants who got fired during the season, but he was the previous offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, and that's where he cut his teeth and got his opportunity to be a head coach. Brian Daboll may not be as schematically gifted and innovative as Kliff Kingsbury and Mike McDaniel, but, and let me say this, Mike McDaniel's system is more of a rhythm, timing, passing, precision offense. And I think Kliff Kingsbury's air raid offense would fit Cam Ward better than the precision, timing, passing offense of a Mike McDaniel. But I still love both of them. But Brian Daboll is a guy who brings some solid run game stuff to the table and has done a good job of getting young quarterbacks who maybe have some accuracy concerns, getting the absolute best out of them. Now, Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, who, remember, Brian Daboll got a playoff win with Daniel Jones, okay? But Josh Allen, Daniel Jones, Jackson Dart, they're all far better running quarterbacks than Cam Ward is. Cam Ward is nowhere near the level of design quarterback runner as Allen, Jones, and Dart. Okay? So that's why, for me, Brian Daboll was number 3. And I just want to say this. Brian Daboll is a jerk. All right? He is a butthole. You know what I mean? He's mean. He's rude. He screams at his players. He is a cantankerous personality. He's rough around the edges. He rubs people the wrong way. He is very, very condescending. And again, he's just a jerk. He's a jerk. Now, I think there is a place for that sort of leadership in the NFL. There is a place to be a jerk because it's a demanding industry. You have to demand a lot out of people. So I'm not saying that eliminates him as an option. He's still my 3rd best offensive coordinator candidate behind Kliff Kingsbury and Mike McDaniel. But because he has had most of his success with pure running quarterbacks, and because he is a little bit of a tough personality to deal with, I would have him at number 3. But make no mistake about it, I would be hype about Kliff Kingsbury and Mike McDaniel. I would be happy with Brian Daboll. That would still be a very good hire as an offensive coordinator. So I think that Brian Daboll would still be a slam dunk, and I think a guy like Jeff Hafley, for example, could make a lot of sense if Jeff Hafley is hired as the head coach of the Titans. Brian Daboll is his offensive coordinator. I think there's some connective tissue there. Now, I got to tell you, the last 2 names on my list, who I really do think could be the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans, is Arthur Smith and Matt Nagy. And if I'm honest with you, I would take Matt Nagy as an offensive coordinator over Arthur Smith. I'm so out on Arthur Smith and the way that he deploys his personnel, using Tyler Algier as much as he used Bijan Robinson. The inability to truly maximize the potential of a guy like Drake London or a guy like Kyle Pitts. Yeah, Kyle Pitts had 1 good season under Arthur Smith, and then he brings in Jonnu Smith and tries to phase Kyle Pitts out and never gets him back to that level ever again. Like, the way that Arthur Smith deploys his personnel, the way that Arthur Smith runs all these sissy foo-foo plays where he thinks he's so smart and he's going to outsmart the defense. Like, I'm out on Arthur Smith as any kind of high-level coach on a team. He's not a head coach. He's not even an offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith needs to go back to being a tight ends coach or a run game coordinator or something like that. I am out on Arthur Smith. And again, we go back to scheme familiarity. While I'm not high on Matt Nagy as a coach, especially a head coach, I'm totally out. As an offensive coordinator, Matt Nagy wants the opportunity to call plays again. He's not going to get to do that in Kansas City, and quite frankly, he's not even under contract in Kansas City right now. So, I think that Matt Nagy would make some sense for the Titans if they go with one of these defensive coaches, because you do have a relationship with Mike Borgonzi, and not only that, but I go back to Cam Ward does have a similar skill set to Patrick Mahomes. They are similar players in their playmaking, their arm angles, their arm talent, their mobility level. They do have some. I'm not telling you that Cam Ward's going to be as good as Patrick Mahomes. The odds of that happening are very low. I don't even need Cam Ward to be as good as Patrick Mahomes. I don't need to win 3 Super Bowls with Cam Ward. Give me 1. Give me 1 Super Bowl before I die. That's all I ask, okay? Give me 1, Cameron. That's all I really want. But again, what Matt Nagy has seen happen in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes could help him craft an offense that is better to suit Cam Ward's skill set. Now, I know the pushback. You know, the Chiefs' offense has gotten worse once Matt Nagy went back to Kansas City. And you're right. That's why he's number 4 on my list, and he's in the lowest tier. He's in the hate tier. That's why I like Kingsbury and McDaniel and Daboll way better than I like Matt Nagy. I'm not saying that he's the best one, okay? So just keep that in mind when we're talking about the options. And once a head coach is actually hired, we can examine their connections in the industry and then find some other options that make sense too. But out of the guys who have interviewed for the Tennessee Titans head coaching spot, Kliff Kingsbury, Mike McDaniel, Brian Daboll, Matt Nagy, and Arthur Smith are the only guys that I think make sense as an offensive coordinator for the Titans. So with that in mind, oh yeah, Jason Garrett, baby. What about Listen, Jason Garrett comes from the Air Coryell system, which is an air raid system, which matches Cam Ward's personality and matches Cam Ward's skill set. So Jason Garrett is like a quarterback coach or a senior offensive advisor. I would be fine with that, but I'm not. He's absolutely not going to be an offensive coordinator or anything like that. So those are the guys who I think make sense for offensive coordinator for the Titans. Now we need to talk about the defensive guys, because at the end of the day, I think there are a lot of these candidates who the Titans have interviewed for head coaching positions or have requested for interviews that I think could make sense as a defensive coordinator as well. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way, and there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make, and that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications, because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your team can all call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. It's so simple using Quo to do all of these things. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNFL. Again, that's QUO.com/LockedOnNFL. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode is also brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, packed schedules, doing podcasts, head coaching interviews, breaking news, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. And that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're the rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit in your schedule, 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, and quick lunches. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Go to homechef.com/LockedOnNFL. That's homechef.com/LockedOnNFL for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Again, that's Home Chef. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Again, we talked about Mike Tomlin not being an option. The Titans have interviewed quite enough people at this point, and we talked about the best offensive coordinator options. Now I want to talk about the best defensive coordinator options. Before we do, thanks again for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. I had somebody ask in the chat, when does anyone think a coach will be hired? Chris, I've talked about this previously. I think the Tennessee Titans will not hire a coach until probably next Saturday. I'm looking at the 24th of January. I think the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th. That makes a lot of sense. But one thing that you have to take into consideration is, what if the Titans are interested in Chris Shula? What if the Titans are interested in Vance Joseph? What if the Titans, which we know that they are, and Vance Joseph already did an interview, a preliminary interview during his bye week, but they're going to want to do a follow-up interview. So there could be candidates that are still in the playoffs by next weekend that could slow the Titans down. Okay, so I think that we should expect a hire, I would say not this upcoming weekend, the 17th, 18th, but the 24th, the 25th. I think by the 26th on Monday, the Titans should have hired a head coach by then. And if they haven't, then we already know that the head coach that they're going to hire is someone who's currently still in the playoffs. It's going to be pretty obvious by the time that we get to that date. So I would say, 10, 11 days from now, you might have your next Tennessee Titans head coach. But once we get a head coach hired, again, then it goes to who's going to be the coordinators. And if the Titans hire an offensive head coach, which is what I want, then the defensive coordinator position becomes incredibly important. And when we look at some of the guys who have interviewed, I think my number one option as defensive coordinator out of the guys who have interviewed for a head coaching spot is Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris may not be a head coach in the NFL, but this is a guy who will inspire, who will lead, who will dominate the room and get the best out of the defense. I think that Raheem Morris, while again, he may not be a head coach, look at what happened with the Atlanta Falcons defense this year. Here's a stat for you guys. Over the last, outside of this season, take away 2025, prior to the season, the last 20 years the last year in the NFL, the Falcons had the least amount of sacks in 2024. The last 5 years in the NFL, the Atlanta Falcons had the least amount of sacks. The last 10 years in the NFL, the Atlanta Falcons has had the least amount of sacks. The last 20 years in the NFL, the Atlanta Falcons had the least amount of sacks. Raheem Morris attacks it, gets some good edge rushers, and now they had a great pass rush and a really good defense and took a major step in that realm. So I think Raheem Morris is a very good leader. I think he's a very good defensive mind. And I think Raheem Morris would make a ton of sense as the defensive coordinator if the Tennessee Titans were to hire an offensive head coach. Think if they went with a guy like Kevin Stefanski, Raheem Morris would make sense. Think if they went with a guy like Mike McCarthy, Raheem Morris would make a ton of sense. I also think that Raheem Morris would make sense as a defensive coordinator if the Titans hired a coach who is a defensive guy but doesn't want to call plays. You know what I mean? Or say the Titans hire, I don't even like to say it. I refuse to believe it, but for the sake of discussion, say the Titans hire Matt Nagy. I think Raheem Morris would be an excellent option as the defensive coordinator. So, I think Raheem Morris, out of the guys that the Tennessee Titans have interviewed for a head coaching role, Raheem Morris would be the best defensive coordinator of them all. But the guy who got a request from the Titans on Tuesday, who kind of caught me by surprise, was Johnathan Gannon, who is the former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals who just got fired. Gannon may not be a leader to be a head coach if you don't have the fire in your belly, but it's not good. He doesn't command a room. But Johnathan Gannon is a great defensive mind. He had the Philadelphia Eagles defense on tilt when they won the Super Bowl. Well, Vic Fangio when they went to the Super Bowl in 2022. The defense was great for the Philadelphia Eagles that year. And Johnathan Gannon runs a really nice scheme, cover 4, zone-based scheme. And I think that Johnathan Gannon is one of the best options available. Now, my third best option is a guy who hasn't gotten a head coaching interview. My next two options have not gotten head coaching interviews for the Titans, but I wanted to throw him in here for the sake of conversation. Denard Wilson. I don't think that Denard Wilson is a bad defensive coordinator. And look at what he was able to do with the pass rush of the Titans. The Titans actually, after the bye, the last, 8 weeks of the season, the Titans pass rush was pretty good. The Titans run defense got a lot better. I think that Denard Wilson is a good defensive coordinator. He may not be a head coach. He may not be a great defensive coordinator like some of the guys who are getting head coaching jobs, but Denard Wilson is a good defensive coordinator. And God forbid the Tennessee Titans ever give that man some talent. Denard Wilson had nothing in the secondary, nothing as an edge rusher. Outside of Cedric Gray, nothing at linebacker. The Titans' defense has been bereft of talent for most of the last 2 years outside of the interior defensive line. Yeah, Tavondre Sweat and Sebastian Joseph Day and Jeffrey Simmons are good players. But outside of that, over the last 2 years, Cedric Gray was good this year. But it's not like Denard Wilson has had a lot to work with, and the Titans' defense kept them in a lot of games when the offense was doing nothing. So if Denard Wilson was brought back as the defensive coordinator, I would not be mad about that. And then Anthony Weaver. Anthony Weaver, I thought he would get a head coaching request for the Tennessee Titans. He didn't. I would bring Anthony Weaver in. Miami Dolphins defense did great in the back half of the season. And again, that's a team that has some talent on defense, but it's not overwhelming. And they traded Jalen Phillips, and Bradley Chubb has been banged up, and he got the most out of Chop Robinson. So, I think Anthony Weaver would be a great hire as a defensive coordinator. And the last name that I'm going to talk about here is Brian Flores. A lot of you guys get in the comments and say, Brian Flores, Brian Flores, Brian Flores. Brian Flores is not coming to Tennessee. Brian Flores is not coming to Tennessee. If you remember back with the Mike Mularkey situation, there were accusations of improper racial profiling for the Titans, where they gave a sham Rooney Rule interview to to Brian Flores. He found out about it because Bill Belichick called the wrong guy. He meant to call Brian Dable, and he called Brian Flores and told him he was getting the New York Giants job. The Titans have had issues with that before. Brian Flores is not coming to an organization that has had some, racial accusations in their past. I'm sorry, guys, but you just have to be realistic about that. Brian Flores will not coach in Tennessee. I'm sorry to burst your bubble on that. But nonetheless, I think Brian Flores will get a head coaching opportunity. He's not going to go be a defensive coordinator for the Titans. If he's going to be a defensive coordinator this year, he's going to go back to Minnesota. And Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, basically said exactly that in his press conference earlier this week. So keep that in mind. Now, I don't think John Harbaugh is not a coordinator and wouldn't be a coordinator. Mike McCarthy's not going to be a coordinator. Kevin Stefanski's not going to be a coordinator. Robert Saleh's not going to leave to be a coordinator somewhere else. Steve Spagnuolo's not going to leave to be a coordinator somewhere else. Lou Anarumo, Jesse Minter, Jeff Hafley, Chris Shula. These guys are Vance Joseph. They're not going to take coordinator positions. If they did, they would just stay where they're at. You know what I mean? Or in Kevin Stefanski, Mike McCarthy's case, they're just not going to take that. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.